You're in the mix.
SKM presents Strictly for the Music Podcast. You are now live with the #1 podcast for all upcoming artists worldwide.
It's the real deal.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode. This is Strictly for the Music Podcast. I'm your host, DJ SKN, and that's just I got live with Red. His debut in 2014 with Back Down to Georgia, 2017 So Happy, and in 2020 he released Purple Women. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, let's introduce our guest, Pat Beasley.
Woo, what up?
Hey man, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. This is our first meeting right here. Do you want to let the audience know what was your upbringing like, and how did you get inspired in music?
Absolutely, man. So I grew up down in southeast Georgia, in the low country down there, not on the coast, but about 40 miles from the Atlantic Ocean down there, probably about 60 miles north of the Florida line. And my upbringing was we always had music in church. I grew up in church, so we had really good music in church, and I remember that vividly. And my dad played guitar. He played like old country bluegrass. And I must have been, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 13, probably 13. I don't remember when my dad was like, hey, if you want to play, go get the guitar. I'll show you something. So I started getting him to show me how to play. And actually first started to learn, I learned how to play bass guitar and found a bass guitar and amp. So he showed me how to play bass. And then I gradually, converted to guitar, but I'd pick the guitar up and I wasn't good at it, so I'd get frustrated and put it down. I think I was between somewhere 13 to 15 years old. It was probably about 15 when I finally learned enough licks on guitar that I kind of stuck with it and learned. I was playing in the church band and playing bluegrass, Carter Family, Bill Monroe, Jimmy Rogers, stuff like that, until my later teens, when the grunge, Seattle grunge thing hit with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all that stuff, and fell in love with that. So started playing all that kind of stuff, and took some guitar lessons as well. My mom got me some guitar lessons. This guy showed me some basic theory, how to figure out what key you're in and how to respond to that with playing a major scale or pentatonic scale or something like that. And I really got into guitar magazines, so I would learn songs through tablature. So I did that for a while, and I wasn't, in my high school, I didn't play sports. I wasn't in any really clubs or anything. I would come home and play guitar. Played a lot of guitar. Played in a couple bands with some friends and some bands with some older guys in my hometown, and so that really pushed me just playing, just getting out there and playing. And then I got in college, man, and I got more into like Widespread Panic and the Grateful Dead and the jam band scene, and I got into some jazz and stuff like that. And it's just sort of progressed over the years. Now I like a little bit of everything, man. Outkast, is one of my favorite groups, and I'd love to cover the Outkast in one of our shows. Unfortunately, I cannot rap, so I don't think that'll ever happen, but yeah, that's sort of a general, overall picture of who I am. I'd say some of my favorite artists, as far as guitar influences, would be J.J. Cale was a big one. Allman Brothers were a big one. Early Widespread Panic was a big one. And then Jerry Garcia from the Dead has always been a big influence on me. And then any bluegrass guitar playing, I love. They call it flat picking, and that's one of my favorite styles that I really love. I'm not that good at it, but I still strive to be a decent flat picker one of these days. So yeah, that's kind of a nutshell overview look.
All right, man. So you said that you grew up to music and everything. How old were you when you started learning the guitar with
Well, I think I was around 13 when I first started, and my dad he played guitar. Like I said, he never pushed it on me. He's like, man, if you want to learn to play, go get 2 guitars, bring them in here, and I'll show you some stuff. So it was probably around 12, 13, somewhere around there when I first started asking him to show me how to play some stuff. But I think I was more like 15 when I really got into guitar, and I'd learned enough chords that I could kind of, follow a basic G-C-D chord pattern or something like that. And my fingers were starting to work. And so somewhere around 15, 16 really started kicking in.
All right, all right. So, were you playing like with other bands in your local area before you took on your solo gig?
Well, my playing has progressed. I first started, I played bass in a church band when I was somewhere between 13 and 15. And then I started playing guitar in the church band. And then me and some high school buddies put a band together, and we were playing covers. We were doing Jimmy Buffett and stuff like that. And then had another band during high school where we were playing all like outlaw country and Leonard Skinner and stuff like that. And then I moved up to college and tried to play a little bit, but I was always playing guitar, and especially in college, I started writing songs, but I was not confident enough to sing. Like if you put a microphone in front of me during that time, I was just scared to death. And so it was in my later, probably mid-20s, before I really started singing. And I had all these songs written, and my vision was always that I would find somebody to sing the songs, and I would just write them and play guitar, and we'd have a band, but I never could find anybody to sing my songs. So say somewhere in my mid-20s, I was living in Atlanta. I tried a couple little singer-songwriter, open mic type things. And then it was towards really my later 20s, early 30s, we moved up to Knoxville. And I really just was like, hey, nobody's going to sing my songs, so I'm going to do the best I can with them. So I just started singing and open mics and anything I could find. And was really, really, I had no confidence as a singer, and I still don't think I'm that great of a singer, but I'm good enough to at least get my songs across. So that's what I try to do. I put a lot of time in my lyrically. I put a lot of time in my lyrics, and then I just try to get that message across the best I can. But my singing ability, I would never see myself like on American Idol or anything else. I can't go up and down the range and hit all those high notes and all that kind of stuff. I can tell a story, and that's how I try to spend my energy as a singer.
Wow, that's amazing. So, you said that in your early 20s, you didn't have a lot of self-confidence in you. Playing in front of a crowd for the first time, was that overwhelming for you?
No, it was, it was, when I first started playing in front of a crowd, I was actually in high school. And I remember the first time or two, I was a little nervous, but I never really got that nervous playing in front of people. It was more if I had to sing. If I had to talk on the microphone or address the crowd, or if somebody asked me to sing, I was petrified. I couldn't do it. That was the challenge for me. And it was a little bit of a challenge playing, but I always felt like when I was playing guitar with other people in a band, I could kind of hide behind them, and I just kind of fit in, and that's where I was comfortable. That's where I've always been comfortable, is just kind of fitting in and not being the head guy, the head honcho. And so that's really what took me a lot of, I had a lot of challenge with sort of coming to terms with that. And it was all in my head. It always is, that stage fright. It's all just something that you create in your own head. And once you realize that, you can start to address it. Or that's the way I approached it.
All right, man. All right, so how are you different from other musicians?
How am I different from other musicians? That's a good question. I think maybe, I really, as a singer songwriter, like I was saying earlier, I focus a lot of time on my lyrics, and I probably more than I should. And sometimes it's good because I've written some things that I feel like are very well written, and they say exactly what I want to say. But it makes it hard for me to finish a project, like to finish a song, because I overanalyze it, and I'm always thinking, how can I write this different? How can I change this so it really says what I want to say? So it's like I'm a little anal about it, so to speak. And so it slows me down, where I know a lot of other musicians, they just crank songs out. They're just like, yeah, here's this idea, bam. Here's this idea, bam. Here's this idea, bam. And I've got a few songs that I crank out like that, but most of my songs, man, I spend years on them, and I can't comfortably release them or share them with anybody until I feel really comfortable with them. So I don't know. Maybe that's different. I don't know if other musicians do that way or not. And then I think the other thing is just musically and lyrically and with my singing ability, I don't feel like I'm that skilled. So I just try to hone in. It's kind of like, well, I'm not the best singer, but what can I do? And let me focus on what I can do, kind of thing, And so, which took me a long time to get there, because I used to just be like, I suck at singing. But now I'm like, hey, man, I can sing. Here's the range I do have. Here's the notes I can have. So how do I work those? How do I use those to my advantage? So I guess what makes me different, I guess, is just the way I approach it and the way I think about it. It's kind of a logical approach rather than just a feeling or a trained approach, I guess.
All right, man. All right. So, taking it back to 2014, back down to Georgia, man. What was this project like creating it, and were you going for a particular sound?
I didn't know what I was going for. It was my first time going into a studio, and I had these songs that I felt like some of them were worth sharing and some of them still needed some work. But I kind of was like, if I don't go in the recording studio and record these things because I don't think they're perfect, I'll never do it. So I was just like, I'm going to do this. I picked the songs that I thought were best at the time. And I was like, I just want to experience the studio. So I went into the studio, local guy up here in Knoxville named Dave DeWitt. He's got a studio called Shed 55. And he played the drums, and he also did all the recording. And I played the guitar, all the guitar parts. I played all the bass parts, and I did all the vocals. And it was just a good experience, man, just getting an idea of how the studio works, getting an idea of how, if you take a song idea that's not completely worked out in the studio, it doesn't sound good. I would have something that around the campfire sounded great. My friends loved it. I loved it. And then I did the same thing in the studio, and you listen back to it and you're like, oh man, that's not good at all. It's like the studio picks up everything. If you don't have it, it's just a whole different thing. And so getting that perspective and that experience was great. But going into the project, what I thought it was going to be and what it turned out to be were two different things, but it was getting that experience and that exposure to the studio and the process, and really learning that you have to craft your songs if you're going to record them, versus just singing them live. It was a big eye opener and a big learning experience for me. There's still some of my favorite songs on that album, but it's more, I consider that album, Back Down to Georgia, more of a demo. It's not a radio quality recording, but it's still out there. It's on Spotify, all that good stuff. You can listen to it. I've considered taking it down, but it's still out there for now, because I think it's if people are interested in my music, I think it's one of my, there's some artists I love that, like Brent Cobb, if you're familiar with him. If you listen to his early recordings versus his latest recordings, he sounds like two different artists. And so the interesting thing is just listening and to the progression and how he progressed and grew and changed his sound and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that was just it was a learning experience, and I'm proud of that album. I don't think it's my best work, but it's my first work, and I'm proud of it and enjoyed doing it.
All right, man. So maybe for your first demo, man, you get with this producer and you guys start do you guys just start right away, just start making tracks and you already had the lyrics, or how did this process work out? Like, what was it like working with this producer?
It was good, man. It was, again, Dave DeWitt at Shed 55 Studios here in Knoxville. He was great. I had the songs were written lyrically, musically, they were all there. And so he would just basically, he's like, what do you want to do? He'd hit record and play. So, basically I went in and we did a scratch track, which was just me playing guitar and singing so we could get the basic idea of the song. And then we went back on top of that and he put drums down. And then I went back and put bass down. And then I went back and put the actual guitar parts down. And then I went back and put the vocals down. So it was like a layering effect, which was cool. And it was, so that's how we did it. And it was a big learning curve for me, having to listen to the metronome and, try to get everything on time. That was my first experience with that, which was, for me, was challenging. It still is challenging to do that in the studio, but that was the process, and I learned a lot from it.
All right, man. All right, so coming back in 2017, you had a couple year break. What sparked you to drop So Happy?
Well, so between the time I put that first album out and So Happy, I was so 2014 to 2017, I believe it was, and I'd got involved with the local music scene here in Knoxville, and I had more songs to record, but I just took some time. I wanted to get a band together, so I, found some different people to play with, got a couple different bands together, and eventually I had a group of guys that we were doing regular gigs, and everything's working out. And I had more songs, so I decided to go in and do another recording. And the drummer I was working with at the time, Mr. James Gilley, who's still here in town drumming, and he also has a very successful musical promotion company called Promotion LLC. But he introduced me to a guy named Brian Vodine here in Knoxville. And Brian is the founding member of 10 Years, which is a local rock band. And he has a recording studio in his house. And I wanted to record, but I didn't have a lot of money at that time. We just moved here, bought a house, trying to figure the job thing out and all that. And so I was able to do a trade-off with him. I provided him some services and he provided me some services. So recorded with Brian, and it was awesome. The first album with Dave, Dave was more like, hey man, play what you want to play. We're going to hit record. We're going to go. And on occasion he would be like, that didn't sound so good. Let's try that again. Or that's not working. But then working with Brian, Brian was more of what I would call a producer. He really had a lot of studio experience, and he has a great personality, and he had a way of taking my ideas and making them better but making me make them better. He would like push me, and he's like, that was okay, but you can play that better. So we're on the first album. It's kind of like, hey, I'm going to give this 3 tries and we're going to take the best one. On the second album, it was like, no, we're not doing this until you get it right. So, we'd spend like 2 hours on one little guitar part or something like that, which was a whole new experience for me. But it worked out, and it pushed me, and it made me realize that I'm capable of more than I thought I was. Like I said earlier, I've never been super confident. So it gave me confidence that, hey, I can do this. It just takes practice. It takes time. It takes persistence, So I appreciated that. It was a different experience. And we got some good sounds. If you listen to Back Down to Georgia and then you listen to whole So Happy, I mean, you can definitely hear some similarities, but I think musically it was pushed to a whole different level. And on So Happy, that album, I played all the guitars, all the bass, did almost all the vocals. Brian actually did the drums, and then we hired in Andy Wood came in and played guitar. He's a very very good guitar player, and he played mandolin on a couple songs. And then we hired in a keyboard player. So the first album, Back Down to Georgia, is super guitar heavy, and so is So Happy, but it does have some keys in it and some mandolin and some other people's influence, which was always my goal. You know, if you record all the instruments yourself versus bringing other people in and getting other people's influence, you get a whole different sound, a whole different result. And that's what I've always enjoyed and kind of wanted to go after.
All right, man. So elaborate on the first song off of So Happy, which would be So Happy.
Yeah, so that was the title track. That's probably my most popular song even to this day out of everything I've put out. And I think there's a couple reasons for that, but we'll start with what I wrote it about. The time I wrote it, I was living up in Washington, D.C., and I was just missing my friends down in Georgia that I hadn't seen in a while. And I had a trip planned to go see them, and I was just kind of like down in the dumps. I just needed to be with my old school friends, you know. And the song came to me. I was like, what is it? You know, it's like, what is it that makes me miss them and want to be around all these cats, you know? And it was like, well, it's because it makes my soul happy when I'm with them. They get me, I get them. We've got experience and all that. And so I just sort of took that idea, Soul Happy, and sort of ran with it. And so that's what it's about, is just, you know, that feeling you get when you see that old time friend you hadn't seen in years, and you just pick up right where you left off, you know, and it's like nothing ever happened, and you're just as comfortable with them as you were 10 years ago, you know. That's sort of the gist of the song. And I think people get it, you know. I think it's just a kind of easy listening song. It's got a little bit of rock to it. It's got a good little guitar solo, but I think just the idea of the song is something that everybody can relate to, you know.
All right, man. So was this album that you did you do any music videos to it?
No, I have not. I've yet to do any music videos. It's been on my mind. I'd love to do a music video, but I have not accomplished that goal yet.
All right, man. So Godfather Time.
Yeah.
Third track off the album So Happy.
Yeah, Godfather Time. That's a fun one, man. I love that song. It took me years to write that song, basically because of you know, and I don't know that I really accomplished exactly what I was trying to say with it, but musically I had an idea, and it's not an easy song to play necessarily. It's not like a 3-chord or 5-chord song. It's got a lot of very kind of technical aspects to the song. It's kind of a jam band song, really. I think it's an influence, you know, from all the jam band music I've listened to over the years. But lyrically, it's you know, it's about, I call it Godfather Time because it's just about like daydreaming and being in a daydream state. And I remember, like, as a kid growing up in Southeast Georgia, it's just hot down there. And in the summertime, you know, me and my neighbor would hang out and we'd fall asleep in the shade of a tree. And you're in that like sleep stage and you're listening to cars driving by and stuff. And it's just, or you go home, you know, and there's this like dreamy state when you go home and you're staying in your old bedroom and your parents are there and that kind of stuff. So that's what it refers to, Godfather Time. It's just about times in your life when you're in the most comfortable situations where things are just happening and there's no there's nothing you have to do. You're just super relaxed and laid back, and you feel safe and comfortable. So lyrically, that's what it's about. But musically, it was one of the songs that I feel like pushed my limits, to the extreme at that point. And it's a hard song to play. It's still a hard song for me to play, and it's a hard song for me to pull off. And I played everything on the album, like I said, other than the drums on that one. So when we do it live, it's hard. We never have recreated it exactly right. It always comes out different, but it's a hard one. We have to practice it. When I teach that song to a band, it's it's one you really have to wrap your mind around as far as the music and the chords and the timing and stuff like that. But I love that song, man. It's one of my favorites.
All right, man. So, Kill the Cat If You Love Me.
Yeah. Kill the Cat. So this is actually two songs that I put together as one. And Brian Vodine over at his studio, he really helped me out with this one and making this vision come true. But so it's two different songs. Kill the Cat is something that I remember as a kid. Like, I'd go to the grocery store with my mom, and I was really shy, so we'd see somebody that we knew at the grocery store, and she's like, say hey to Aunt Pamela or whoever it is. And, I'm like hiding behind my mom. And I just remember there was a saying, they're like, oh, it's all right, the cat's got his tongue. What that meant is just like, he's bashful, he doesn't know what to say, right? So I took that idea and applied it to other situations in my older life. Like, there's it starts off where I'm talking to a friend and he's just lost a loved one, and I don't know what to say to him. When somebody loses a loved one, it's like, what do you say to them? Right. So, and then it goes on. I'm on a bus, and there's this hot girl that I really want to talk to and introduce myself, but I can't say anything. I don't know what to say. My tongue's just locked up. So I kind of took that idea and ran with it. That's what Kill the Cat's about. A lot of people, I've got a lot of questions about that one. They're like, why don't you like cats? I'm like, man, I love cats. I don't have anything against cats. I actually wanted to be a vet at one time. Love animals. That's not the cat I'm talking about. It's the cat got your tongue, and you just can't find the words. Yeah. So that's what that song's about. And then If You Love Me is kind of like a love song, sort of, where you as you get older and your perspective changes a little bit on what a relationship's all about. When you're younger, it's all these romantic ideas, and as you get older, it's like it becomes a little more, I guess, pragmatic, and you're just like, hey, we're living together, how do we make this thing work? And it's like it says, if you love me, say you love me. If you don't, say that you do anyway. It's like, just, hey, just lie to me kind of thing. It's like, just make this work sort of thing. But the groove on it is awesome, man. And I didn't spend a lot of lyrically, it's not one I spent a whole lot of time on. It was just sort of, I had this idea, and it's a loose lyrical idea, but the groove on it is awesome. And the way it turned out with the drums and the bass and the keyboard and everything, it's like, it's really groovy song. It'll get you on your feet moving around. That's what I like best about that tune. And Kill the Cat, the guitar solos, those are some of my favorite guitar solos that I've put out. And again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Brian Vodine, man, he pushed me to my limit on that, and he brought out the best in what I had at that time. And so I have to attribute a lot of that to him.
All right, man. So, moving forward from 2017, last year, 2020, Purple Woman, first song, Bad Man.
Yeah. Bad Man. So Bad Man, we started there's a difference. I recorded that album with Brian Vodine as well. So the last two albums were recorded in the same place. And some of these songs on the last album, Purple Woman, were new, and some of them were songs that I'd had for a long time, and I'd finally finished them. And Bad Men was one of those. And as a singer songwriter, this is something I learned. I actually did a singer songwriter class with this guy named Daryl Scott. If you've never looked up Daryl Scott, you should. He's a great singer songwriter. And so I did a songwriting class with him up in Nashville, and it was nothing like I thought it would be. It wasn't like, you know, you learning some kind of formula for writing songs. It was more like a therapy session. And his whole thing was like, look, these songs come from somewhere, and you have to dial into what that is. And he said something to me, he talked to the whole class about, you know, as a singer-songwriter, you can write songs. You got to figure out who your artist or your listener is. And sometimes you write a song and it's just for you, and you don't need to share it. And if you do share it, people don't get it, whatever. It's just a song you wrote for you. And then there's other songs that you write that people need to hear. And so Bad Men is one that I held close to me for a long time, because it's literally about my family. It's, you know, it's not 100%, but it's almost literally about my family. It literally says first verse is about mama, second verse is about daddy, third verse about brother, fourth verse about sister. You know, and everybody's got family, so everybody can relate to it. And that's how I tried to write it. But I held it close for a long time, and I was scared to share it because I thought it was just too close and too personal, and people wouldn't get it, or my family would get pissed off at me or something. But, you know, listening to what Daryl Scott had to say about it, and when I played it for him, the class, they were all like, man, that's like, we can all relate to that. We all have family. We can relate to all those situations. So I decided to release it. And when I first wrote it, it was more of like a slow kind of Americana thing, and it just never felt right. So I changed it to more of a rock. You know, it's got this just simple rock sort of lick to it, and I feel like it worked a lot better that way. So it's a heavy hitting song, you know, lyrically for me, and I think for other people to listen to it as well, if you can relate to it with your family. And that's why I put it on the front. I just wanted to start that album off with like, hey man, I got something to say, and hope you can relate to it. Here we go. Put your seatbelt on. So that's Bad Man.
All right, man. Next song we got up, Bible Belt Drinking.
Yeah, Bible Belt Drinking. So that's one that just came directly from me growing up in the Deep South. And we had a church and a liquor store on about every corner in town. You know, that's sort of where I grew up, in a small town. And so it was just about the things that I saw in my life, and the mix between, you know, the way I was raised and expected to be religiously, morally, you know, all that stuff. And part of it was also just making fun of the alcohol laws down in the South. Like, I remember growing up, on Sunday, you could not buy beer or liquor, but any other day you could drive through a drive-through window at a liquor store. You could order 2 cups of ice, a fifth of Jack Daniels, and some Coke, mix a drink, and drive off. And I'm like, what? Does that make any sense? Okay, we can't buy anything on Sunday, but any other day we can go through a damn drive-through and just mix it up and go. So it was sort of about just, you know, the crazy, in my opinion, idiotic liquor laws and alcohol laws and blue laws. I mentioned that it's all blue laws if you go back and read about the history of it. So it's a historical and just a personal reference to what I experienced on, you know, in any day you can be at church. And I remember going to one church, and the preacher had a flask in his pocket, and, you know, when people weren't looking, he'd take a little nip and then he'd preach, you know. So it's just sort of about that whole thing, man. Alcohol and church and family life down in the Deep South. So that's what that song was about.
All right, man. All right. So, man, Does growing up in like a, you would say, a Christian home and being raised with these values, man, does this does this play part of your music, bro?
Absolutely, 100%, man. It plays a part in all of my life, and I think, however you grow up and what values are instilled in anybody, it comes out. And that's something I think it comes out in my music because it's something I've thought about a lot as I've gotten older, and I have kids of my own now, and I'm like, who am I? What do I believe? Do I believe the things that my parents told me I should believe, and the things I learned in church that they said, or do I believe the things I've experienced on my own, or is it a little bit of all of that? It's that philosophical question of who am I, what makes me a good person, kind of thing. So yeah, definitely, growing up, all those things that I was taught and the way I was growing up makes a huge impact on who I am and also my writing. But I feel like it's come out a lot in my writing as I've kind of hit my middle age years here, and reflect on it. And it's just reflecting on who am I and who do I want to be, and how do I want to raise my kids, and how do I want to influence them, all those questions.
All right, man. So, you want to elaborate on demons?
Yeah, man. So Demons is, I think that's the song that's going to keep coming back up. That's, again, directly related to when and where I grew up and how I was raised. It's a song about racism here in America, and what I saw and experienced in a small town in South Georgia as far as racism goes, and what I experienced from my family and friends and people at church. It was a double standard kind of thing in some ways, but I just remember at school and at church and everywhere they're teaching you one thing, but then you go home and behind closed doors you hear your family talk about things and say things that you're like, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to treat people this way, but now you're saying something completely different,
Right.
And so it's the whole, and it still goes on today. It's generational. This is a term that's new to me, and I think it's what I wrote about, but I didn't know this term. But generational racism. We keep passing this shit down. Why? Why we need to stop and reflect and say, even though this is what I experienced and the way I was raised to think about things, I can rewire my brain and think about things differently. And I think about it too. I look at my grandparents' generation, and I think about what how my grandparents' generation looked at racism issues, and then I look at my parents' generation, and it got a little better. And then I look at my generation, and it's a little better, but it's still there, and it's still there because we keep passing it down, and we got to stop doing that. So that's what that song "Demons" is about. And people ask me, what are the demons on the roof thing? There was a time I was in church youth group somewhere, and somebody was explaining to me about sin and how we're influenced. And they're like, it's basically like this is what they told me. They're like, every time you walk out the door of your house or a building, there's a demon on the roof, and as soon as you walk out the door, that demon jumps on your back, and they're trying to influence you towards sin and doing bad things. And that's the way they explained it to me. And that image always stuck in my head. And I was like, I can use that. That's whether it's true or not. It's a good image and it's a good way to explain something. And I think that's kind of how racism is. It's always there, man. That demon's always on your back, especially if you grew up, with those influences in your life. That demon's always there, and you're always trying to beat his ass off, and it's a hard thing to do.
All right, man. So, Doggy Blues, man.
Oh man, Doggy Blues is just a song. It's an altered blues riff that I wrote. I think that it's a cool little blues lick. It's got a really cool turnaround as far as the musically, lyrically. It's just kind of wrote it about my dogs, and I had 2 labs, and was living in the city for a while. So it's just about freedom, man. Getting out in the country where there's no fences, and you and your dogs can run around and be free. It's sort of that simple. Which I don't write a lot of songs like that. So that's one of the reasons I really like that one. It's just super simple.
How long did it take you to write this one?
Not long, because I wasn't really trying to, get across some big message. It was just, it was in the middle of all these other songs that I was writing that were super heavy. And that's why I put it on this album, because you got Bad Men, Bible Belt Drinking, and Demons. They're all heavy hitter songs.
Yeah.
And another thing, that's one of the things I learned in that songwriting class with Daryl Scott. He was talking about songs, particularly, he's like, if you're talking about a heavy subject, somewhere in the song, you got to give your listener a break. He's like, you can literally beat your listener up if you're too heavy, for too long. And so I was thinking about that with this album. And I was like, man, I need a light. I need to break the tension here. So that was sort of why I put Doggy Blues as number 4 there, because, if I had another heavy hitter, I think people would just quit listening,
Right. Okay, man. All right. So, track 5, Highway.
Highway, man, that's a good one. Love that song. So what makes that one different is most of my songs, I try to write about things I have experienced. Highway is something I've never experienced, but I just tried to imagine what it was like. So when I wrote that song, I was imagining what it would be like to fall in love with somebody, want to spend the rest of your life with them, but then something happens and you end up hating them. I've never experienced that. And I was just thinking, what would that be like? How would I feel, And so I kind of created this story. So that's what Highway is about. It's just a sort of made up idea of somebody that they're falling in love, and now shit's kind of hit the fan, and this guy's out for vengeance looking for this girl, and then he finds her, and then everything's all right, kind of thing.
All right, man. Hell yeah. So, number 6, Old Dog Hobo.
Old Dog Hobo. So that one actually, it was a poem that I wrote, and me and some buddies went on a hiking trip on the Potomac River up in Virginia years ago, and it was in the middle of the winter. And when we got up there, it was like raining, snowing, sleeting, ice, little mix area. Not good hiking conditions, but we wanted to just get out there and not see anybody. So we hike into this campsite, and there's somebody there camping out. And we ended up meeting this guy. His name was Dane, and he was a hobo, and he just walked around the country. And we hung out with him, and he showed us how to take 2 Coke cans and make a stove out of them that you could cook your food on. And he told us about how he would get food from people and, things like that. And he'd just get water out of the river and make his coffee and stuff like that. But he taught us so much. And when we were driving out of that hike, for some reason, there were all these dead dogs on the side of the road that had been run over. And I just had this idea. The next morning, I was actually at work in a meeting, and I wrote this whole song down in like 5 minutes. And I just had this idea of like how society sees a stray dog and how society sees a hobo, and how there's similarities there. And so it's a real abstract song, it's not I don't consider it one of my greatest writings as far as perfectly making sense, but like the idea of it is just like, again, it's kind of going back to that racism thing and how we see people and how we treat them, and so I compared a hobo to a stray dog, basically, is what that song's about. Musically, it's a riff I wrote back in college and I've always loved the guitar riff on it, and it's super repetitive, but it's a lot of fun to play.
All right, man. So we're getting to the last song of the album, titled Purple Woman.
Purple Woman. Yeah, this one I've always left sort of open to interpretation. Well, let me ask you, did you listen to that tune?
Purple Woman?
Yeah. Have you heard it?
Nah, I listened to Back to Georgia and
Okay.
So Happy, but I haven't gotten to this one. This was going to be the last one I'm going to review.
So Purple Woman, and this will relate to the cover of the album as well, but growing up where I grew up, there are certain times of the year you can go out in a cow field and you can find these, they call them magic mushrooms growing in the cow patties. And if you pick them and eat them, you can have some crazy experiences. I believe they call it tripping. That's what a lot of people call it. And we used to do that. And it's a song I wrote back in high school after I'd picked a mushroom and ate it for the first time. And it's just about, kind of how I fell in love with that, but also it's not something that's sustainable. You can't do it all the time. But it had a, even because this is a heavy hitter album and I talk a lot about religion and stuff. Eating mushrooms and tripping for the first time opened my eyes and gave me the same kind of feelings and visions and things as going to church did. It was a very similar, very different, but also very similar to me. So basically the song's about tripping on mushrooms.
All right, man.
Hopefully in a good way. So
that's what's up, man. All right. So let me ask you this, man. You said you haven't had no music videos. It's a brand new year. Can your supporters, your following, your fans, your everyone that's out there that's streaming your music, can they expect more maybe music videos this year, or are you gonna leave that down to 2022?
I don't know, man. I'd love to do a video for Highway and a video for Demons. Like I've got the videos already laid out in my head. For me, it's a matter of time, finding time to do it, and resources and things like that. So I'm not sure is my answer. I would love to get one done this year, but I definitely can't guarantee that it'll happen. So it's, music for me, my goal with music is not to be a full-time job or, be doing music 100% of my energy. I have another day job and I have a family, which I put those two things priority over music, but music is very important to me and it's something I have to have in my life. So, it's a little, I think one of your questions for me is what makes me different than other musicians. And
Yes.
that might be one of the big things is that, it's not something that I do or I'm trying to pursue as a living. It's something that I do because it's fun and it's an outlet that I have to do. It's creative and it's, I'm going to keep doing it. But I also, if I start pressuring myself and I'm like, I got to put a music video out by June, then it becomes unfun for me and I don't like it anymore. So that's one of the things that's different for me too. I take it in my own stride and I kind of approach it in my own way. And it doesn't mean that a lot of people take that as well, he's not a serious musician, because he's not doing it as a living. Well, that's not true. I am a serious musician. I put a lot of time and energy into it.
Right.
But it's not, it's just a different approach for me. It's something I enjoy. It's creative. It's also something that I do, to replenish my soul. It's something that I do for myself. And when I feel like it's something that I'm ready to share, then I share it. That's sort of my approach with it. And so I try not to put too many, deadlines and constraints on it because then it becomes something else for me.
All right. So, being independent and working at your own pace, between 2017 you dropped Soul Happy and 2020, in between that spread right there, did you do any concerts right there or any open mics or anything like that?
Yeah, man. We put the album out in January of 2020. We had 2 CD release shows that we did here in Knoxville, and we had like 5 or 6 others lined up. Our last one we did was March 7th, and after March 7th, COVID hit, everything shut down, and everything got canceled. And then it kind of slacked up for a little bit, and we got some more stuff on the books, but then it shut down again. So, and during that time, I've done probably 4, I think, singer-songwriter open mic kind of things, like out on an open patio where there's plenty of room for people to social distance and that kind of stuff. But not a whole lot's been going on. I haven't really done any live streams or anything like that. We just sort of just put everything on hold until we get past this obstacle. And we're probably going to re-release the album. I actually had some of the songs edited so that they're more radio friendly, and I think we're going to do a re-release and try to promote some stuff on radio and kind of go that route. So, but no, we haven't been playing out, man. I've mostly just been working on new songs for the next album. I got a handful of new songs that I'm really excited about, so I've been working those out and getting them ready, so that when I can get back together with my band and we can rehearse them and go in the studio and record them. So that's what I've been focusing most of my energy on.
All right, man. All right. So future collaborations?
I'm always open for collaborations, man. And, my band changes from time to time. That's why I called it the Pat Beasley Band, is because, I can pick whoever I want to play with. I definitely have some favorites in town, but, sometimes they're busy with other bands and things like that. So I basically got a collective of a bunch of local musicians that I work with. And if you see the Pat Beasley Band, honestly, it could be any number of lineups of any number of different people. So.
All right. So if you could collab with any musician, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, if I could collaborate with a dead musician, it would probably be J.J. Cale or Jerry Garcia. And I'd probably choose J.J. Cale just because I feel like he had a bigger influence on my guitar playing and soul writing. He was just simple, but also his playing was just so smooth and so great. It was just, if you ever saw him live or look up a video, J.J. Cale, he was just amazing. Somebody that's still alive, I would probably pick Warren Haynes from Government Mule, also and formerly of the Allman Brothers. And I just love his playing, and I also love that Government Mule is a lot of times it's a 3-piece, and it's a trio: guitar, bass, and drum. And he's the lead guy, and he can seamlessly be the lead singer, the lead guitar player, the rhythm guitar player, and all of those things combined at any given time. And it's just amazing to see that on stage with a 3-piece.
All right, man. So who is your music targeted towards?
That I have no idea, man. I think ultimately I write my music for myself. And I don't write my music. I don't have a target in mind other than I've got something I want to say, and I want to say it the right way, and I want to be happy and at peace with it. And if I can accomplish those things, then I'll put it out there, and whoever wants to listen to it or relate to it, they can. But I don't approach it as a marketing, like I'm trying to write this song for this certain target kind of thing. It's just not the way I look at it.
Okay, man. All right. So favorite lyrics in the songs you wrote?
Favorite lyrics in a song I wrote would be, I'd probably pick Soul Happy or Demons. I think Soul Happy is the looser, happier feel, and then Demons is just it in a lot of ways says what I want to say. So.
All right, man. So do you have any music guilty pleasures? And can we expect you going out of your genre, maybe exploring another like jazz?
Yeah, my new, or whenever I get back in the studio, I've got a couple songs that I'm hoping to do more bluegrass style or jug band style. So which would be like, a jug bass and, fiddles and banjos and things. So that sort of Americana bluegrassy juggy feel is something that's hopefully coming up in the future.
All right, man. So what are the goals right now in 2021? You said you were working on a new project. Do you have a release date or the name of the album?
I have a potential name of the album, which is Riverside, which is also the name of one of the songs, which is basically about going down to the river and rejuvenating yourself. But release time, I have no idea. With COVID and everything, I don't even have a band right now. Just me and the band, we're just not getting together because we're taking this COVID thing serious, and we don't want to get each other sick or spread this virus around. So until all this COVID stuff breaks, I don't know. I'm hoping to have something done this year, but I just can't say for sure when that is. I've got all the songs written I've got a whole album worth of songs, and half of those are done. Half of them I'm still kind of finalizing up, lyrically and musically, but, yeah, I'm hoping, like I said, that we'll have an album out by the end of the year.
What is the best advice someone has given you?
Write about what you know, and decide if the song is for you or for somebody else. And if it's for you, keep it. And if it's for somebody else, share it. I think those are a singer-songwriter advice. That's some of the best advice I've received. And take yourself seriously, and I wrote a song one time in that songwriting course I was telling you about. They were like, write a song. And I wrote a song, and I was like, I think this is crap. And one of the things they told me, they were like, look, if you think your stuff's crap, everybody else is too. You gotta have some skin in the game, and you gotta have some confidence and believe in your song. So believe in what you're writing, and if it's not right, work on it until it's right, and then share it.
All right. So, would you use that same advice to any upcoming band or musician that's in your local area?
Yeah, it's been good advice for me, so I would pass that advice along. But I would say if you're an early band, early musician, just put it out there. See how people react to it, and don't take yourself too seriously, unless you really feel like you need to, and just try things different and see what works. If something feels like it's not working, try it a different way. It's kind of like Jim Croce said. He said, if you don't dig it, don't do it. He said, if you dig it, do it again. It's like super simple advice like that. You try it, and if it works or it doesn't, and you change it and try something different. You know what I mean?
All right, man. So, how is your music going to evolve from here on out?
I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm hoping to do something a little more. My last two albums were really produced, had a lot of production in them. So my goal for my next album is to do something that's a little more organic and less produced. After that, I'm not real sure.
You got any special shout outs you want to give?
Yeah, man. Shout out to Dave DeWitt at Shed 55 Studios that helped me with Back Down to Georgia album. Shout out to Brian Vodine at Rain Song Creative Studios that helped me out with Soul Happy and Purple Woman album. Shout out to Sterling Walsh and Chris Brada that played with me. Shout out to Chris Lamb with Real Knoxville Music that I'm doing a lot of stuff with now. And I could keep going, but I'll stop it there.
All right, man. Final words and plug in all your social media and let everyone know where they can find your music so they can stream it.
Well, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, pretty much any streaming site. We're under the Pat Beasley Band, and that's P-A-T. And then Beasley is B-E-A-S-L-E-Y. So the Pat Beasley Band, you can find us there. We've got a website at thepatbeasleyband.com. There's not a lot there. I got to work on that a little bit, but you can order our albums there if you want a physical copy of the CD. You can get them there, and I've got some package deals. Just go to the merchandise tab. You can find us on Facebook under the Pat Beasley Band. And really, that's the only place, when we have gigs coming up or anything, the only place I really post it is on Facebook. So that's probably the best place to keep up with us.
All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Pat Beasley Band. This is Strictly for the Music Podcast.